My handbag, along with my passport, had completely disappeared. I frantically searched every inch of the terminal, but it was nowhere to be found. All the while, I could feel the judgmental eyes of my mother-in-law, Susan, on me. Her disapproving gaze was accompanied by a smirk that made my heart sink even further. "You brought this on yourself," she taunted, her voice laced with mockery. "A careless wife like you deserves this. We're heading to the USA soon. Maybe this is your way of saying goodbye." Her laughter echoed, each note sharp and taunting. At that moment, the gravity of my mistake hit me hard. I had foolishly trusted Susan with my things. Now, her betrayal left me feeling completely vulnerable. "My name is Deborah. I'm 31, and I've been married to Gabriel for 2 years. Though we haven't started a family yet, we've built a stable and happy life together in a town near his mother's home. I balance my career with household responsibilities, giving my best to manage both. Since my father-in-law passed away 6 years ago, Susan has often been alone, and her frequent visits are a constant source of tension. Her critical remarks about my housekeeping never seem to end. Why don't you quit your job?" she would suggest dismissively. "As a working mother someday, your job isn't that important anyway. Gabriel deserves better than this mediocre housekeeping." She would swipe a finger along a windowsill, inspecting for dust, and sigh dramatically. "Look at this, dust everywhere, it's embarrassing." Though I'm not perfect at housework, Susan's constant belittling felt unfair. I did my best to keep things tidy, cleaning every morning before work, but each day felt like a new test to prove myself. Unexpectedly, Susan proposed a family trip, inviting us and Gabriel's sister Laurie's family. I was uneasy at the thought of traveling with her, given her history of harsh comments. I shared my concerns with Gabriel, who tried to reassure me. "Maybe she wants to connect with you," he suggested. "It could be a chance for her to make good memories and strengthen your relationship." "You're right," I replied, trying to match his optimism. "This could be a chance for us to break down some of those barriers." Susan took charge of everything, from choosing the destination to arranging the itinerary. We found ourselves adjusting our schedules to match hers. "I hope Mom's choice isn't too extravagant," Gabriel mused. "She mentioned New Zealand," I replied with a sigh. I was uneasy about the cost, but Gabriel remained firm. "Let's go with it, we'll make it work," he said. So, we set off for New Zealand, pooling our resources and coordinating vacation time. The trip turned out to be spectacular. The landscapes were stunning, the food delightful. We made memories, but when we reached the airport to return home, I still felt a trace of disappointment. "It was such an amazing trip. I even got a tan," Susan said, her smile unusually bright. "It really was wonderful," I replied, but Gabriel noticed something off in my tone. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. "Nothing major," I said, "but I was hoping to bond more with your mom. We didn't get any private time together to really talk." Gabriel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We all had a good time together, that's what matters." As we prepared to board, Susan suddenly announced, "It's so crowded, I need to use the restroom. Deborah, could you hold my bags? Everyone, leave your bags with her." She handed me her heavy luggage and disappeared with the others. Just as I thought I'd have some relief, Laurie said, "I'll take over in a minute, I just need to run to the restroom too." Moments later, Susan returned alone. "That was fast," I remarked, surprised. "It was empty," she said, glancing around with a critical eye. "Now, where exactly did you put my bags?" "They're right by your feet," I pointed out, gesturing to where her luggage rested. Susan's expression turned sharp as she scooped up her bag. "Why is my expensive bag on the floor? I handed it to you so it wouldn't be set down. Honestly, how could you be so careless?" Still weighed down by everyone else's bags, I struggled to respond. Her tone was laced with disdain. "Enough, you're utterly thoughtless," she snapped. "Why don't you go to the restroom too? I'll graciously keep an eye on your bags, just leave them on the floor. Your cheap bag will be just fine," she added, her voice thick with sarcasm. "Thank you, I'll be quick," I replied, placing my bag on the ground before rushing off to the restroom. But once I got there, I found a long line, which made me feel even more uneasy. Just as I reached the line, Laurie came out and immediately asked, "What about the bags, Deborah?" "I left them with Gabriel's mom so I could use the restroom, but it's packed in here," I replied, feeling a bit uneasy about leaving everything with Susan. Finally, after what seemed like forever, I made my way back. Laurie was waiting nearby, hesitant to venture off alone, and together we returned to where we had left Susan. She stood there alone, the others were nowhere to be seen. "Thanks for watching the bags," I said, glancing around for my own, but a strange feeling came over me as I realized my bag was missing. "My bag's gone, I left it right here," I said, scanning the remaining bags frantically. Only mine was missing. Susan barely looked at me. "Your bag? I don't know, maybe it was never here," she replied coldly. No, I'm sure I left it right here, in front of you, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, feeling a rising sense of betrayal. Susan shrugged, her face expressionless. I didn't see anything, so don't blame me. But you asked me to leave it with you, I cried, my voice trembling. My passport was in that bag. Susan sneered, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Maybe this is karma for how you treated my bag, tossing it on the floor. A careless wife like you deserves the consequences and to stay behind. We're done here, you're on your own. She laughed mockingly, her callous words fueling my anger and despair. But this wasn't just my problem, everyone's passports were in my bag, meaning none of us could return to the USA. Susan's expression froze as she processed this. What? Why would you have everyone's passports? She grabbed my arm, her voice rising in alarm. Lori, who had been listening intently, interjected. We were worried about losing them, so Gabriel gave them to Deborah. You might not have noticed, Mom, because you were busy with other things, she said gently, hoping to diffuse the tension. Susan looked stunned, her face tense. Is that so? I must have been distracted, she said, her tone suddenly uncertain as the weight of the situation hit her. But why weren't the passports with Gabriel? Susan asked, a hint of accusation creeping into her voice. Gabriel was loaded down with bags, so I'd been holding on to them since we left the hotel, I explained, meeting her eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself as Susan's irritation grew obvious. She exclaimed, why didn't you tell me something that important? I had no idea your bag had everyone's passports. I would have been more careful if I'd known. I struggled to believe her sudden concern. What do you mean? You were supposed to be watching the bag, even without knowing what was inside. Are you saying it was stolen? I asked, my tone laced with disbelief. Lori, visibly pale, pressed Susan further. Mom, was Deborah's bag stolen? I have no idea, Susan replied coldly, crossing her arms. When I looked, it was simply gone. This is incredibly irresponsible, I said, feeling my frustration bubble over. Just then, Gabriel and the others returned, sensing the tension. What's going on? He asked, his worry evident. I quickly explained the situation, and Gabriel's face fell as he glanced at Susan with disappointment. This is serious. We need to find that bag immediately, he said. I turned to Susan, trying to keep my voice steady. I left it right here, as you asked. It was only 12 minutes since Lori and I left for the restroom. Susan, where were you? Susan stiffened. I was right here, watching the bags, but your bag was at the edge, out of my line of sight. I can't be perfect, she retorted, turning away dismissively. Gabriel didn't hesitate. Let's report this to security and check the surveillance cameras. We can't waste time. But Susan grabbed his arm. Wait, filing a report seems excessive. We can reissue the passports ourselves. It'll be faster and less complicated. Gabriel shook off her grip. No, we need to act now. Lori immediately backed him up. Absolutely, Gabriel, we shouldn't take any risks. Susan, defensive, claimed it was her responsibility and insisted on finding the thief herself, arguing that police involvement was unnecessary. Her voice rose as she argued her point. Lori cut in sharply, defending me. That's not fair, Mom. Deborah did nothing wrong here. Watching the bags was your responsibility. Gabriel stepped beside me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Deborah is already taking enough responsibility. Why are you so against filing a report, Mom? Susan hesitated, looking uneasy. I've never dealt with the police before. I don't feel comfortable with it. I think we can handle this ourselves, she said, her voice uncertain. Fine, she added after a pause. I'll help look. Let's split up and see if we can find anything ourselves. Just then, a young man approached Susan. There you are. I've been looking all over for you, he said, holding a bag. I found this and thought you might be in trouble for leaving it behind. I'm glad I found you. Your trip could have been ruined without it. Stunned, I took the bag from him. Where did you find it? I asked. In the lounge, on a table. I tried calling out, but you didn't hear me and walked away. I've been trying to catch up with you, he explained. We thanked him, then turned to Susan, whose face had gone pale. Mom, what's going on? Why was Deborah's bag in the lounge? Gabriel demanded, his frustration clear. Did you leave it there on purpose, Mom? Lori asked, the realization sinking in. Gabriel's face tightened as he spoke. You didn't plan to watch our luggage at all, did you? Leaving her bag in a distant lounge, hoping no one would see? It's unthinkable that you'd treat Deborah this way, Lori added, her voice trembling with anger. You knew the cameras would show the truth, didn't you? I quickly checked the bag. Thankfully, everything was there, passports, wallets, phones. Relieved yet furious, I turned to Susan, ready to confront her once and for all. How could you do this, Susan? Why would you act like this? I demanded, my frustration boiling over. Susan didn't look the least bit remorseful. I was angry. She threw my bag on the floor, my precious bag. I'm not the villain here. How was I supposed to know that ratty old bag of yours had everyone's passports? Don't twist my actions into something malicious, she retorted defensively. That's enough. Gabriel's voice rang out, sharp and unyielding. Mom, this has gone too far. Since Deborah and I married, I've been hoping you'd change, hoping we could build a bridge. I realize now I was wrong to overlook all the pain you've caused her. I'm sorry, Deborah, he said, his apology bringing tears to my eyes. He turned back to Susan, his voice steady and resolute. Mom, deliberately mishandling someone else's belongings, especially out of spite, is unacceptable, and if necessary, the surveillance footage will confirm what happened. Susan was visibly shaken. Gabriel, you're not seriously going to bring the police into this? We're family. Deborah is only your wife by marriage. There's no crime in a mother taking her daughter-in-law's bag, she pleaded desperately. Gabriel's gaze remained firm. Mom, that excuse is absurd. Family or not, your first step should be apologizing to Deborah, not trying to rationalize your behavior. Hiding behind our relationship is embarrassing. We won't go to the police, but this incident has shown me how much needs to change. Taking my hand, he looked at her one last time. We're severing ties with you. Mom, don't contact Deborah or me again. We'll be taking a different flight home. Please, Gabriel, don't do this. I know I went too far. I'll make it right. Just give me a chance to apologize, she begged, clinging to his arm in desperation. Lori, heartbroken, stepped in. Mom, stop. This isn't helping, she said, her voice shaking as she gently pulled Susan back. Lori's husband supported her as they walked Susan away, leaving Gabriel and me alone. As we watched them go, I turned to Gabriel, uncertain. Are you sure about this? Cutting ties with your mom? He nodded firmly, embracing me. Yes, you're the most important person in my life, Deborah. I should have stood up for you sooner. We managed to book a different flight, returning to our lives free from Susan's presence. Lori, too, chose to distance herself from her mother. In time, we moved far from Gabriel's family home, finally free from the tension that had haunted us. 8 months after that fateful trip, I found out I was pregnant. Susan would never meet our child. In our peaceful new town, free from Susan's shadow, Gabriel and I looked forward to a future built on love and trust. My only wish now is for our little family to grow in happiness, far from the turmoil of the past.